Hey there, it is Phil Ratcliffe, and welcome to our Rebel broadcast. And Tony Jones, we're going to go over the Secure Act today, which are actually major changes that I think for a lot of Americans just kind of flew by, and it doesn't seem like it is anything, but it's pretty big. So we're going to delve in and give you a high-level overview and give you a couple resources that if you wanted to dig into it some more, but obviously if any of these hit into something that affects you, talk to your advisor, your tax professional, et cetera, to make sure that you get the most out of it. So, first of all, let's kind of hit into some of the new IRA rules. Tony, I'll let you start naming some of those off.
Sure, and just a little bit of background. So this has been nearly a year in the process. The Senate finally approved it after the House did at the end of December, and then the President signed it in an appropriations bill on the 20th. So Phil's absolutely right. You need to talk. I mean, there are still going to be some nuances made, so just make sure you're talking to your accountant or a financial planner as well. So the first thing I like to talk about, and the reason this one I put first was because we work with Dave Ramsey a lot, and a lot of our Dave Ramsey clients have an interest or have adopted children. And so whether it's adopting or whether it's giving birth to a child, you are now allowed to remove from one of your an IRA or 401k, 403b, $5,000 per person. You'll still be taxed on it, but you won't have the 10% penalty. So that's $5,000 per individual, so you can do $10,000 a couple. You can actually even pay it back within a particular time. That still needs to be worked out. Pay yourself back, so to speak, without, then you can recapture those taxes.
So hopefully you're in a position to where you can save up and you can fund that. For most people, that would be the most beneficial. So it's like, one of the things as financial advisors we try to always put out there is like, you should just kind of see your retirement pots as inviolable. However, this does at least give an extra safety net to people to non-penalize for something that is good, right? So the next one I think has been really big in the financial advisor arena, which is the elimination of stretch or inherited IRA, the old rules. And so the old rules used to be able to stretch it out over your entire life expectancy. So especially if you left it to a kid or grandkid, I mean, they could stretch out the tax payments for a long time, and that tax deferral was awesome. And so now it's just changing to 10 years. So you got to have it all out over 10 years. And it doesn't have to be equal or amortized or anything like that. It's just got to be all done in 10 years. So it's very important that if you're in that situation that you do some tax planning / financial planning, because you could have different years in which your taxes are lower or higher. And there's no set rule to it besides it needs to be done over this time period. So you should be really strategic in taking that extra money out when your taxes are lower, and that's going to be important. So next,
and like many of these, there's exceptions to that. So just make sure if you think you might have an exception, you check on that. Another one is currently, if you have a traditional IRA, you need to start taking RMDs out starting after 70 and a half. That has now moved to 72. So you get a little bit of a break if you haven't already started doing that. So that's good for my.
If you have started, you're stuck in the old way.
You're the grandfather clause.
Yeah.
So that's that one. You do the next one.
So let's see, and then I think as well that there is some taxable non-tuition fellowship stipend pay that used to be to researchers and postdocs and whatso that a lot of times didn't necessarily get counted as income. But now it can be counted as income if you wanted to make more than likely a Roth IRA contribution. So early in your career, if you're, PhD researcher, et cetera, that's a great thing to do if you have the extra cash flow availability, right? So.
Yeah, and you're saying Roth because you're not making a lot of money.
You're probably not paying any tax, so you might as well put it in something that'll be tax-free.
So do it that way. But let's look at the other end of the spectrum. Older folks, again, if you do continue to work past 70 and a half, you can now contribute to an IRA. And so before you had to stop, you couldn't do it past 70 and a half, but now you can. It's on, as long as you have the earned income, you could put that in. So anyway, that's a little bit about the IRAs. But there are some other nuanced ones, so just
this is not everything. It's high level. So again, if any of these things that we're talking about pertain to you, you should kind of dig in deeper. Let's share the screen real fast to see. We can show you a couple resources here that we have up here that are actually pretty neat. And actually, this graph that we're showing you first is actually a high level one as well too. Some of the bullet points of some of the stuff that we're talking about. And actually, this comes from one of our main journalists that we like called Michael Kitces, and his blog. And so he has this is really in depth about the whole Secure Act, and you can really dig into it. But this chart is here, so even if you just Google it right now, this chart is there. So check it out. We're going to go back to kind of digging through. We're going to go into the next thing, which is the 401k provision. So
yeah, the only thing I'll say about that is Jeff Levine is the one who did a lot of that research. Yeah, so
this one.
He's great at that stuff. So, so the first thing we'll talk about is if a lot of folks see they don't have the economy of scale to start a 401k, so you can actually combine with other companies. You used to always be able to do it. It's a MEP or a multiple employer plan, but now there are less restrictions. So while before you had to have some commonality with the companies, I mean, it could be so much as the Chamber of Commerce in a local city, but now there's none. You don't have to worry about that. One of the other things holding back, the second thing I'll talk about is there was, if you had somebody that did some malfeasance within the plan, it affected everybody. And that is no longer the case. So if you have a bad apple within a group, that bad apple is just isolated and you're not only going to get in trouble for it. So a lot more friendly now than it had been in the past.
Cool. And then one of the big changes that may affect a lot of small or medium employers is that they increase the tax credits that are available for employers to adopt plans. And so it's 50% up to, what's the maximum?
Up to 5,000.
Up to 5,000. So, I mean,
for 3 years.
For example, a lot of the plans that will open up for smaller employers like dentists or optometrists or small doctors' practices or the employer costs end up being something like $1,500 to $2,000 per year, right? And so you would get 50% off for the first 3 years, which is great, So
it is meant for the startup costs.
Yeah, for the startup costs.
Yeah.
And so, that is great that that there's this new subsidy there for smaller employers. So especially if you have something like a simple IRA it's really worth a look at possibly switching to a 401k because the amount that you could contribute is potentially a good bit higher.
Yeah, and you could add on to that credit by adding auto enrollment as well onto the plan. That's worth $500, but it's probably a good feature to have anyway to get people started with that. So, that's another part of it too.
For sure. And then I think we mentioned the big ones there, but there are a bunch of small things that change with the 401k plan in terms of like minimum hours worked to be included in the plan to try to include some more part-time workers that are really long-time workers. They added a couple safe harbor rules for like employers that want to add annuities into the 401k so that employers can kind of add like a private pension type option, which has its ups and downs. We're not going to get into again how complicated this discussion can be. So yes, giving people guaranteed income is awesome. Insurance companies having more freedom to just sell expensive things is probably a negative. So, it's something to be watched out for, but I guess extra options don't hurt, right? So anything else you want to kind of mention on there?
I guess the other one is, I think from our point of view, tax planning point of view, is we actually have passed the December 31st deadline to start a plan.
Oh yeah, that is a good one.
So that I think is a great one. I mean, no cost to anybody.
So yeah, before it's like you had to set up your plan before the end of the year. Now they're saying you can set up a tax filing deadline. Yeah. So if somebody really finished the year and they were so busy at the end of the year, but they were really profitable and they're like, we need to have a retirement plan, they can go ahead and set that up in January or February or March or and go ahead and have it.
Yeah. And 100 hours 3 years in a row, they're supposed to be included in the plan as well. So So more openness there.
So we'll go over a couple more things and we're going to kind of wrap it up. We don't want it to be too long. Again, kind of use some of those resources that we mentioned if you want to have a deeper dive into this. But I think another one of the cool things that I thought, and I never understood why you couldn't in the past, is using a certain amount of 529 funds to be able to pay down student loans. So that's great. I mean, especially if, like, say, the markets are really down, like 2008, 2009, when your kid's going to school, have them take out some loans, and then when it recovers, then pay it off, and so that can work out really well.
So a little bit of arbitrage. So, and you weren't able to use 529s for apprenticeship fees and things like that before. So a little more flexibility with 529.
Yeah. Another little one was, before it was just mortgage interest deduction, and now I think they're going to allow the insurance part of it, mortgage insurance protection type thing, to be deductible as well. So I think that's probably a pretty good one for middle class and below that are buying houses, because that can be a significant increase, but it can still absolutely be worth it to be able to get into a home.
Yeah. For those that are fortunate enough to have this problem, the kiddie tax for a couple of years was now taxed at the trust level tax rates, which it's harder, faster. But that is reverting back to the parents' income tax rate. So that's a difference. So for 2 years it's changed, and now it's going back.
So, I mean, there are some more things here. Obviously, I think we hit the most important ones that I think would hit most common households or what. So there are more. I saw a list by one of my peers on one of our peer review group that was just like, the list was just so long in terms of like some of the caveats and little things and explanations, which obviously was still a summary of what the actual legislation was, but anyways, it's good to have professionals or consult every once in a while, because they can break down that huge thing into like what's really applicable to you. So. Yeah. So anything you'd like to add on to there, Tony?
I tease. Anytime I talk to people, I'm like, well, the next tax change isn't going to be a tax decrease. This is more tax decrease.
Probably.
Probably in many cases. So, and there are a number of other things, but they're getting to be more nuanced and smaller and things like that. So, but I referenced the dates because if you are looking for what's in there, try to look after December 19th or 20th. If you see an article before that, it's more likely to have a mistake in there. So just make sure you check it out. So.
Well, thanks for joining in with us again today. Appreciate you taking some time to learn a little bit more about things that will probably impact your financial future. If you have questions, we're more than happy to help. If we don't know, we have contacts, CPA firms, attorneys, etc. We'll point you in the right direction. Thanks to all our partners and stuff that we borrowed some of the information from. And hope you guys have a good start to the year.
Have a great week.